of changes with the LSAT. People asking a lot of questions, especially some of our international applicants about the, wanting to use the GRE as a substitute, the digital format, the limitation on retakes. And I know this is your area of expertise. So can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing this and exactly what your organization does?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. I've been teaching the LSAT for about 15 years now, and there have been a lot of changes along the way. The biggest one, of course, being the new digital LSAT transition that just happened this year in 2019. Starting this fall, the LSAT went fully digital in North America. Students are getting administered the LSAT on a tablet, specifically a Microsoft Surface Go tablet. They get a booklet of scratch paper, but this does change how students need to prep. So I would suggest getting a tablet or borrowing one for at least a couple of practice run-throughs just to get a sense of what the format will be like for students. I won't do a whole walkthrough here because students can go elsewhere for that on my YouTube channel and podcast, or even go on LSAC's site at familiar.lsac.org to get a sense of what the exact features are like. If you can't get a tablet or don't have one, just treat your prep books like a screen. Don't write on them. Don't highlight on them. Do all your work on scratch paper to the side, which as a bonus lets you reuse your practice tests if you want to redo problems later. So for those outside North America, it still is a paper and pencil LSAT. Law schools are certainly aware of this change, but if you can't get the score you want, don't just blame it on the digital LSAT. Retake if you need to. And speaking of retake limits, David, yes, there are some new retake limits implemented this year. Specifically, you can now take the LSAT only 3 times in one admission cycle, which runs from June to May. You can only take it 5 times in a 5-year period and 7 times for life. You can apply for exceptions to the rule, but you better have a really good reason. I don't expect LSAC will want to make too many exceptions to this. And the reason they have this limit, by the way, is that due to the digital LSAT, they are reusing a lot of old, previously unreleased test forms. So someone who takes the LSAT overseas 3 years ago, that same test might be used in North America this year, or might be used as a future Sabbath observers test administration. And so there is some test reuse. LSAC is going to have to ramp up production of test forms, but that is one of the biggest changes. And so, as I would always say, don't take the LSAT until you feel reasonably confident you'll be ready, in part now, in addition, because of this new retake limit.
I imagine that I saw that there was a limitation on if you've received a 180, you can't retake it. So I don't imagine many of our students are having those issues, but that would be a great problem to have. I imagine that's more aimed at people in your position. So I hope you haven't taken the LSAT 12 times and gotten all those 180s and been the reason for this, for all those poor students who wanted to go out and take it and get a second 180.
Yeah. Going forward, you can't get too many 180s on record. That is in part because of folks like me who would mess up the quote unquote curve.
And there were, so 3 times in 1 year, a lot of students we speak to that's kind of the borderline of what they're thinking of. So are you finding that students are trying to think about how to strategically time their tests so that they're taking maybe a March iteration or a prior year iteration and getting it as close of a gap to take 4 as possible within the time frame they would actually take it?
Yeah, that would be the ideal, as you said. I think taking it early in the spring so you can retake in the summer and fall if you need to. So I would say, yes, if someone is planning to, let's say they want to apply in fall 2020, they could take the LSAT in January and March, then take it again in July and September. And that would be 4 takes surpassing the 3. I would never really recommend taking the LSAT more than 3 to 4 times max anyway, but that would be a way to skirt the 3 times limit because it's across 2 admission cycles.
So one of the questions that I guess there's 2 ways to frame this question, but it's a question that I get a lot is, how do I start studying for the LSAT? And a lot of times the nuance to that is someone's maybe taken a course somewhere or picked up a book here and there and without much of a plan. And they're interested in kind of pressing a reset button for themselves. How do you advise a student to start? I know you have great plans and schedules and resources on your blog, If you could tell us a little bit about your philosophy there, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So I recommend whether you're retaking or not, if you don't have a strong foundation, the process should look the same. Basically, it's theory, then practice. So you learn the basics, you learn the different question types, how to approach each, then you apply those strategies to specific LSAT problems. And I recommend a 5-step approach that I call the LASER approach to LSAT prep. LASER is an acronym standing for learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. Learning is basically just the theory, learning the basics of what the exam involves itself. Second is accuracy, doing individual questions by type to learn how to approach each. S is for sections, 35-minute timed sections to help you work on your pacing. Fourth is E for endurance and exams, doing full-length 5-section exams, which is what you'll be doing on test day. And then R is for review, which is really often neglected. Students just want to do exam after exam and measure themselves, when in reality, the review process is where you really make the gains in understanding.
Do you recommend for the pacing and sections and also for the endurance that students do things like decrease their time artificially to try to fit it in, or add a section endurance-wise, maybe 6 sections instead of 5?
I like the idea of 6 sections occasionally. So let's say you could do maybe a quarter of your practice tests with 6 sections rather than 5. So do 3 sections back to back, then take a short break, then do 3 more back to back. But as for constraining the time below 35 minutes, I'm hesitant to recommend that because on test day, you will be doing 35 minutes and that could mess up your pacing a little bit. You don't want to speed through them too quickly. The exam is already so time constrained as it is.
Okay, that's good advice. How about for a retake? How would you prepare for a retake? Is there a different mindset, or is it still kind of applying that LASER idea?
It would largely be applying the LASER idea specifically on any identified weak areas. So if you have trouble with grouping games or weakened questions or flaw questions, you could focus more on those in terms of doing those individual sections or doing questions of that type in a row, just to really solidify your understanding there. But it largely does look the same, especially in terms of the review process. You'll just basically be spending more time on the review process than someone who still has more of the basics to learn. One thing I would add, though, is that if someone anticipates that they may need a retake, it's worth saving a handful of recent exams to use for a future potential retake. So maybe you want to do all the most recent even-numbered exams for your upcoming take, and then save all the odd-numbered ones out of the most recent 10 exams or so to do as full-length 5-section exams closer to your retake test date.
An interesting question that I obviously get a lot as well is the last week or the last 2 weeks before an LSAT, I see students really grinding away on full-length practice tests, and I don't know if that is the best idea for them or not. But I, certainly defer to your expertise. What do you advise in that last week if you've gone through the proper, preparation?
Well, the biggest risk I would see from someone who's doing lots of exams in the final week is burnout. Don't do full-length timed exams on consecutive days. Certainly don't do them every single day in that final week. You don't want to burn out. You want to walk into test day feeling fresh. So maximum, I would typically recommend 2 exams, maybe 3 a week, but probably closer to 1 or 2 because you want to allow enough time to review them in detail. And you also want to ask yourself, why are you doing these exams? Is it to get one more victory under your belt before you walk in? Is it to practice a certain pacing strategy? Whatever it is, have that reason in mind. Don't do it just because you think it's what you should do.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case for a lot of students. Just a test day, I've left myself some time, and all I know is to study the LSAT like I have been for the past period of time. I guess my last question is about timing. When do you think is for an average college student who maybe wants to, let's assume they're going straight through from college, when do you think they should take the LSAT?
I think they should probably take the LSAT if they want to go straight, probably in spring of junior year. So like we talked about doing it in potentially March and then again in the summer, then again in the fall if they want to. I'm not saying they should do it 3 times, but if you take it in March, then at least you have more chances to retake it in the future if you need to, and it won't delay your applications in the fall.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. Well, where can we find some more of the helpful advice you've given? I know that you have some schedules out there. I remember from back when I was studying for the LSAT, you were around, and I definitely used a lot of your great materials. So, can you tell us where to find where our viewers can find some of your information?
Yeah, sure. So they can find me again, Steve Schwartz, on the LSAT blog. If you just Google me, I'll come up. You can also search the LSAT Unplugged podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere else, as well as the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. It's where I'm putting out a lot of my information these days.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Steve. It was really great to talk to you and learn from your expertise.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.